What's up, everyone? This is Blake Van. I'm a content creator here at Sycamore, and I could not be more excited to kick off episode 1 of my new podcast, The Principals List, which is sponsored by Sycamore, of course. With this podcast, I'm looking forward to speaking with principals and educators across the country to dive deep into why they chose education as their chosen profession and what makes them keep coming back to school year after year. It's my hope that this podcast can help inspire some people out there, and hopefully we can share a few laughs along the way as well. I'm equally excited to welcome in my first guest, who's a longtime friend of mine named Jim Knoepfel. Jim, my friend, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Just surviving a Florida storm here.
Oh man, story of your life, I'm sure, down there. That's good to hear. It's good to see you. It's good, even better to hear you. So how about let's kick this off. How about I'll give you a softball question here to start. How about you just give me a brief introduction to yourself?
Sure, yeah. My name is Jim Knoepfel, principal here in Florida, in Ocala, Florida, at St. John Lutheran School. Been here for the last 3 years, but been a principal now for over 30 years in a variety of locations. Nebraska, a few places that's still home. I didn't know I was going to be on TV, or not TV, but video, but I am wearing my Nebraska shirt representing. Yes, been a principal in South Dakota and in California as well, but just enjoy what I do, and did work for Sycamore for a while too, and enjoyed that as well, just being connected with schools, and loved it actually.
Perfect. On that note, thank you for that introduction. Let's get right to kind of your career path here. What pushed you toward becoming a principal in the first place, Jim?
Well, initially with education, I wanted to be a teacher and a coach. I had some teachers and coaches that inspired me to do what they do. Looked like they were happy at what they were doing, and I thought, I could do that. And so I just really enjoyed my first years of being a teacher and a coach. What inspired me to be a principal is more of necessity for the school at the time. They needed a principal in the middle of the year, and so they asked me to help out, and I said no.
Mm-hmm.
I was even in the process of getting my master's degree, and I did not want to do it in administration. I wanted to be a teacher. It's what I knew, it's what I loved, and I just wanted to be a classroom teacher, but I decided, I need to help out with this. And I was an interim principal for about half a year, and I was taking my classes as before you could take online classes. And so I had to take my classes on site at Concordia University in Nebraska. After being an interim principal and surrounding myself with good people and realizing that, hey, I can do this, I changed my focus to administration. And so that's how I finished my master's degree in administration. And so I enjoyed it, a lot of challenges, but it's been very rewarding for me. And again, just surrounding myself with good people. And I appreciate the mission of, I've always been in Lutheran schools. So I appreciate the mission and the vision and purpose of what they do. And God has blessed me in a lot of ways to be a part of this ministry.
That leads me kind of to my next question. I'm going back to my education days, especially elementary, or even middle school. It's like, you see the principal as like almost the boss, right? And it seems like kind of a fun job because they're the ruler of all. But let's talk about that a little bit. What are the best things about being a principal, and what are the worst things about being a principal?
Sure. Yeah, I don't have a big ego, and so I don't consider myself the boss.
Sure.
Flaunt that at all.
Yeah.
I think it's just the relationships, successes of schools, it's built on relationships. And so, I think it's very important to know the story of your faculty. That takes a lot of time and effort, but it really helps to understand what they're going through, what they're dealing with on a daily basis. And I love to hear the stories of the kids too, and just letting them know that they're important, paying attention to them, and they know that when you care, they really want to perform. Same thing with staff members. It's pretty critical to get good staff people, and you take your time. Right now, that's what I'm doing. It's a pretty stressful time, but we brought on 2 new people today that I've been working on for a long time. But I know that we're going to make good hires there, and they're going to be able to make those good relationships and help develop that culture. So one of the best parts of being a principal is being a part of a great culture. I enjoy going to work each day. It can be exhausting, but I know that the people around me, my staff especially, that they're doing an excellent job, and I trust them and I empower them. So, and resource them, and they're doing a great job. I just get out of the way, and that's when the fun starts. This school, I don't know what started it with the fist bumps, but I have kids running out of their way, running out of line. Hey, Mr. K, give me a fist bump,
That's
and
awesome.
I just, yeah, it makes me smile a lot. And I even have some students from Nebraska. They'll be up in the balcony up there, and then Mr. K, and they're throwing the bones. Or yeah, I have one student. His name is Lincoln, and is
Yeah.
because from Nebraska, and that's named Lincoln for Lincoln, Nebraska. And he tells me to go Big Red about 3 times a day, and he sees the other students see the smile that I make when that happens, and so his whole class is now saying, "Go Big Red, go Big Red," giving me the fist bump. And but again, just the relationships are, just the importance of relationships and how
Sure.
critical that is. Even to have those positive impacts and experiences, so that when it comes to dealing with discipline or dealing with those messy situations that happen in kids' lives, because kids are going through a lot of stuff too, and there's a lot of confusion, and being able again to relate in our private school, in our Christian school, Lutheran school, being able to share God's promises and integrate His Word not just into the curriculum but into their lives. That's it really drives me. It just gives me a lot of inspiration to do what I do. It is a lot of work, but
Oh,
it's not about me. It's about God's plan. You asked what are some of the bad things? I guess office work. I don't like being in my office, but you have to do it in order to do a good job. You got to be organized, and so I do a lot of that early in the morning or late at night. Delegate a lot of things too. Learn how to do that a lot better. So having my little hiatus there for a while when I wasn't a principal, I was being totally refreshed at Sycamore.
yes.
It gave me, time to reflect on things that I need to do as well, and that's, delegating. But I love being able to connect with schools because I saw so many good things that are happening, with schools. I was not a pushy salesperson. I was more relational, and but I loved asking the schools, what's working in your school? What are some of the success stories that you have? And what's unique about your school? And I think school visits are awesome. If teachers or principals ever get a chance to visit other schools, not that you have to copy or take something away, but it also gives you a chance to reflect and say, yeah, what I'm doing at my school is really good, or they're experiencing the same problem I am too. I'm not alone in this. And I think that's really encouraging, when people can get together, principals can get together. That's why I love conferences, and when I was at Sycamore, I love going to conferences too, because
Yes.
people have a chance to just refresh and reconnect and reflect and take a break for lunch, because I know that they don't sometimes get 5 minutes for lunch. Many times I didn't eat today, I forgot. But at conferences you get that chance to again reflect and build relationships.
Perfect. Yeah. As you were talking, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, whether it's students or your staff members, or even when you're working here, as a salesman talking to other schools, it's all about relationships. So relationships seem to be a big part of your job on your day-to-day basis. So I love that.
I thoroughly enjoy being able to, like I said, visit schools. If I was going to a conference, I'd rather drive there and stop and
Yes.
visit schools rather
Yes.
than just fly there and get home. I'd rather pick up the phone rather than email. And it's the same way at my school. I know my office administrator they understand, but they get frustrated because I'm never in the office. I'm out in classrooms or
Yeah.
meeting with families. I love Carline. I love doing that because I get a chance to meet families and understand what's going on in their life, and get a chance to pray with them, celebrate with them, and or if they have questions or concerns. It's just that personal communication.
Now, to switch gears on you just briefly here, Jim, school management systems, are critical to day-to-day operations, no less as a principal. And
Yeah.
since you've used Sycamore and you've used various other programs in the past and present, what do you look for in an SIS product?
Yeah. Well, when I first looked, that was quite a while ago, and I thought, there's got to be a simple way of doing this. And I was looking at some systems that were very complex, expensive, and I thought, well, they have to be the best if they're going to be complex and expensive. But then I ran across Sycamore, and I realized, that it was first of all, very affordable. What I appreciated was it was very simple. It was very simple to use, and it covered all the bases that we needed to cover for a school management system, and enabled us to focus more time on education rather than just clerical work. It keeps the data. I appreciated was the support that we got from Sycamore. They were rock solid. They were the A team in my opinion. If we had questions, it was personal, and they didn't make me feel stupid too, because sometimes it was just as simple as just something really easy that I wasn't doing. It was very affordable. It was simple, easy to use, and the support team was great. And that's why I didn't have a hard time at all recommending it to other people. In fact, I can remember the first conference that I went to where I saw Glenn and Nancy, and they were standing there in their booth, and I said, "Do you have any brochures that I could pass out to my friends? Because this is a really good program." And that's one thing that principals love to do, is they love to share success. They love to be able to give information to others, so that they can succeed too. Because if you have something that's going to be good for your school, you don't want to just keep that a secret. Why? You want them to succeed too. And so I know a lot of schools came on board there, and that's what I liked about working for Sycamore, is that I believed in the product, and I was able to talk openly with schools about this and not just sell a product, but again build the relationship, and because my reputation was on it too. And
Yeah, that's true.
I'm not gonna sell something just to sell something, and I wanted to sell something that I believe in. That's why it was a great company to work for, and product.
Now kind of transitioned back to your principal role.
Yeah.
I guess, Jim, when you became a principal, what were your initial goals?
Survive.
I believe that.
It was. When you first do something, you don't
Yeah.
know if you're good at it or not.
You were young too.
No, and so I didn't want to come across as like I knew it all. And one of the best pieces of advice is just surround yourself with good people, and empower those. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room. I was slow to speak and quick to listen, and I wanted to find out more information from other people that knew what they were doing, and get advice from mentors. And so as far as my goals, I wanted to do well for the kids first and foremost. Everybody wants to do well for themselves too, but when you see that these kids are depending on you and your staff is depending on you, you want to do well for them. But again, my goal always, with Christian schools and Lutheran schools, has been to support the ministry and understand the big picture. And it's ultimately it's about Jesus, and that's why we're there. There's a lot of wonderful public schools too, and there's a lot of great Christian teachers in public schools. I had a Christian friend who was a public school administrator right there in Fremont, and he encouraged me to apply to be his assistant principal. And I'm like, well, why are you asking me? There's a lot of other people, and I didn't even know if I wanted to do that. He told me what the salary would be, and I thought, well, maybe I should. But in fact, my district superintendent for Lutheran schools, he encouraged me to apply. He said, "You're going to want to know." And I was granted an interview, a rare interview. Talked more about ministry than I did about anything else. And I talked myself out of a job, because I said, I need to go back. I know we need Christian teachers in public schools, but I need to stay where I'm at. And so I'm going to take my name off the list. I've only been in Lutheran schools since then. I don't regret that. Sure. I know I probably would have done well in other schools too, but this is
home. Yeah. And remind us again, Jim, how many years have you been a principal?
Well, 31 years in education.
Okay.
As far as being a principal, it would have been 4 or 5, 6 years of those years I wasn't a principal or interim principal.
Okay. So roughly 25 years of experience as a principal. Do you feel like you've accomplished most of your goals, or what goals do you feel like you still have yet to accomplish?
Well, you're never done. Ministry is never done.
Yeah.
And so I don't see it as, having an end game where I said I've done everything that I need to do. I think if I get to a point where, I don't feel like I'm effective, or, I'm just worn out, then I guess I'll have to hang it up. But I just keep on, striving to, do well at what I do, making sure that, the school is a school of excellence, that we have our core values, are being met. Those are my goals. And those things get addressed through things like accreditation. We're doing accreditation this year, and it It's a lot of work. Some people think it's a pain in the neck, where it can be, but
Yeah.
it holds you accountable. So you do have to perform. Everybody has to perform. You don't want to get lazy with it, and education is constantly changing, and there are needs that are constantly needing to be met, and some things get a little bit more difficult, but you need to be a little bit more strategic with other things. And so with accreditation, that helps you have an ongoing, continuous effort of goals.
You know, Jim, since you do have so many years of experience as a principal, I guess, what advice would you give to someone who would like to be a principal?
Boy, that's a good question. Well, first of all, if they would like to be a principal, understand, why would you like to be a principal? I'd want to understand. But some of the best advice I had is just surround yourself with good people, and you got to be careful who you bring on board with your staff, and make sure that you have a good staff, and pour yourself into them. Be empathetic. Remember what it's like to be a teacher. And because when your teachers know that you have their back and you understand, and you can relate, and you have policies and procedures for things, but you still have to be human, and you have to be able to connect and be real. Because I think when teachers know that you are with them, they're gonna bust their tail for you and go to bat for you. And one thing, food is my love language, and I love cooking, and I did that for Sycamore. I mean, I made tacos and Mexican food for our family. I still do that here for my staff. I have over 50 people, but I still invite them over to my house, and I just did that last week. Fun and fajitas at the Knoepfels, and
That's awesome.
it was a lot of fun. Amy, my wife Amy, helped me prepare everything, and so by the time people came over, everything was just easy to make and go. But it just helps provide that culture where you can still have fun. We can work hard, but we can also play hard.
Love that. Now, Jim, you and I are big baseball people, so I'm going to give the analogy here. This will be a little bit of a tricky one for you. This 95 mile per hour fastball in the black. You might have to think about this one a little bit. But if there was a Mount Rushmore of 4 mentors you've had along the way, who would those 4 people be, and how did they influence you?
4 men. Man.
Told you it's
Now,
hard.
the ones that I leave out, they're going to feel disappointed.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You don't have to limit yourself to 4, I guess. We'll give you that. We don't want to make anybody feel bad either. So
Yeah. I'll start out with one of the best teachers that I had. His name is Vic Peter. He's 90 years old. He still plays the organ every Sunday, either at St. John Lutheran in Seward or Grand Island, Nebraska, or some other visiting place. But he was my 7th grade teacher, and he was one that inspired me to be a teacher. Not that he said, Jim, you need to be a teacher. I mean, he encouraged me, at times, especially when he knew that I wanted to do this. But just the example that he set. My parents and he and his wife were great friends, and I just, he established good boundaries and high expectations for people, but he was also one to smile and joke around and again, be relational. I had a coach when I was in middle school, and his name is Al Hagen. He was a good influence for me too. So I saw, that he enjoyed what he was doing, and I love sports, and I saw the impact that he could make on people, and I thought he was a great inspirational person too. I would have to include my father, my dad. Again, just a great man. I don't know if he had an enemy on the planet. Same thing with my mom. My dad passed away in 2018. Yeah, he passed away, or his funeral was on a Saturday when Nebraska was playing Ohio State, and as we were making arrangements, my mom said, well, I want the funeral to be at this time, but I know they were having an early game, and I said, do you really want to have it on the time that the Huskers are playing, Mom? And she said, yeah, this is the time. And I thought, well, we'll see how many people show up. The church was packed. The church was packed because of the type of person my dad was. He was all about ministry, he's all about Jesus, it's all about church, it's all about caring for people. And the church was packed with Husker fans, but they were packed with fans for my dad. Yeah, he would probably be my number one.
Yeah.
Who else is on my Mount Rushmore? I'd probably be leaving some people out, so maybe I'm going to stick with 3. How about that?
I like 3. It's hard to beat those 3 too. I think those are very influential people in your life, and I think it's cool now you're in a position of influence too, where you can influence other teachers and students. So I think it's cool that you can pay it forward.
Yeah. Yeah, I could talk on and on about my dad, but
You got some good stories with him. Yeah, he's a good guy. I also wanted to ask you, you touched on this briefly, so much has changed in these 25 years that you've been a principal. Now we're in the year 2025, right? So what difference have you noticed when you first became a principal way back then and then now?
oh, wow. See, kids can fact check you now. Before you could say whatever you wanted to, and it was the gospel truth. And now they can fact check you. But yeah, just I guess how technology has become such a huge part of education. Before, as it is becoming more and more popular, it was almost like it was the panacea, it was the cure-all, but it really isn't. And, good teachers are what you need, and that's always what you need. With the influence of AI, the influence of Google, and all the things that are out there, just the quick answers influenced education, a ton. Probably, yeah, with the biggest change. All of these things can be used, in a positive way. And just making sure that, again, you have good teachers who have good influence.
Yep, I think that's key as well. Kind of my last question for you, Jim, here, and this is my favorite question for you, actually, so this will be fun to talk about briefly.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to it, being an educator, a principal, it's ultimately about making a difference in students' lives, which we've talked about throughout the entirety of this podcast, really. Could you please share your awesome story that you told me a few weeks ago about one of your students who loves the Baltimore Orioles?
Yeah, I got a lot of stories. I had a family that they moved here from Baltimore just to get away, not because Baltimore was a bad place. They loved it, but they had a tragedy in their family. There are 3 boys in this family, and they lost a sister, a middle school sister, to a pulmonary embolism. And it was very traumatic for everybody. And so they eventually decided they're just going to move away. The mother is a pediatrician and decided let's start a practice in Ocala. I don't know exactly why they chose Ocala, but they were here, and I have a little boy, 4th grade. One of the 3 boys is a 4th grader and just didn't speak much, still doesn't. Smiles a lot now. He was dealing a lot, with this. And I love going into the lunchroom, just sitting down with random kids and talking about, their experiences, what are they dealing with, names of their pets. But I spoke with him and I said, I know you're from Baltimore, and I just tried to tie in sports, and I said, do you like the Ravens? And he goes, I love the Ravens, Mr. K. But he said, baseball is what I love. And my family, they go to a lot of Orioles games, and I love the Orioles. So I thought, okay, here I go. So I pulled out my phone and I said, who's your favorite player? And he said, Gunnar Henderson, without skipping a beat. So I really didn't know Gunnar Henderson. I don't know baseball like you know baseball, Blake. So I looked him up and I just started, looking at some stats, information about him, and he just perked up and he just started talking about Gunnar Henderson and the Baltimore Orioles. I thought as lunch ended, even his classmates said, Mr. K, he never talks. And I said, well, he does now. And we finished on a good note. And he does talk, but it was just a difficult situation for him. But again, just tying in sports. And I have a cousin who's a scout for, right now he's with the Mariners. And he's been, numbered scout for the Orioles organization. Actually in the Nebraska Hall of Fame as being a scout in the professional major leagues. And I don't use him very often unless I need something that's going to help. And, I talked to my cousin about, there's a boy whose dad had cancer, and connecting him with the Colorado Rockies, and they rolled out the red carpet for him too before his dad passed away. But I called him up and I said, Terry, I need to connect with Gunnar Henderson from the Orioles. How do I do this? And he goes, well, I don't have a ton of connections with them, but this is in October. He said, but they train in Sarasota, and I'll work on it this afternoon. And so he was starting to share a little bit of information with me. And then that evening I went to go check my mail, and I talked to the neighbors across the street, and I looked over a house nearby mine. I saw somebody I'd never seen before get in the mail. I said, well, who's that? And he said, well, that's the Fabian family. And he said, they have 2 boys, by the way. They're great family friends, but they have 2 boys who are really good at baseball. One of them plays for Auburn, and the other one, he plays AAA for the Baltimore Orioles. No way! And so I told him the story, and we needed to connect and how to, and So soon afterwards, I was talking to Mr. Fabian, the father of the two baseball players, and we made a connection. And unfortunately, I couldn't have been there at the time because I was traveling to Texas for Thanksgiving. But we made a connection where the two Fabian boys were home for Thanksgiving, and they wanted to meet this little boy. And they wanted to meet the brothers, too. One was in high school, one's in middle school, and then this one was fourth grade. And so they decided they were going to meet at a park and play wiffle ball. And so they played wiffle ball with them and just hitting it off very well with everybody. But then Judd Fabian and Derek, they said, hey, and his name was Eli. I said, come here, Eli. And he got out the phone, and there was Gunnar Henderson.
Crazy.
I know. So he got a FaceTime with Gunnar Henderson, his favorite player, and he was just awestruck, like, oh my goodness, this is happening. And
yes.
I think his brothers were appreciating it even more, but because, they really understand baseball a lot. But it was just a great connection. So they got to talk about, baseball and Gunnar's friend Jackson Holliday and Orioles baseball and
yep.
We came back from Thanksgiving break. Yeah, we just had a better connection, better relationship. And it's actually, I didn't know that I did this, but I got to choose 2 art projects. We have an art teacher who does a great job of teaching students how to paint dogs. And they painted them on these canvases. They're beautiful paintings. And she said, I want you to choose 2 paintings, Mr. K, and those are going to be the principal's award, and you're going to put them in your classroom, or in my office. I don't have a classroom. And so it was hard to choose which one because I couldn't see the names of the students.
Sure.
It was non-biased. And so I chose 2, and lo and behold, one of them was Eli's. So I got a big picture of his dog in my office.
Oh, man.
And the dog's name, of course, is Gunnar.
Of course it is.
So I actually saw him today. He and his son came in to pick up something at the office, and Eli, he smiles at me a lot and just says, "Hi, Mr. K." And he poked his head in my office, just to take a quick look. Yeah, it's still there. It's going to be there all year long. But anyway, it's a great family, wonderful family, and it's part of our ministry, being able to connect with people. But tying sports into it, love it. And I love being able to tell that story to you who appreciates baseball and our baseball coach, just a few other people. Anyway, that's why I guess I enjoy doing what I'm doing. I didn't enjoy leaving Sycamore. In fact, when they asked me to take this position, I said, I really enjoy doing what I'm doing. And I haven't had any night meetings in 6 years. If you want to choose somebody else, that'd be fine with me. And I'll pray for that person. But, eventually they got me to reconsider. And I am happy to be doing what I'm doing. I really am. It's a lot of work. My hair is a lot more gray than what it used to be. But just making those connections that I am able to make now and the ministry connections, what makes it all worthwhile.
Sure. And on that note, we miss you so much here at Sycamore, but I think you are where you're meant to be, where you're called to be as a principal. So we're all very happy for you.
I still make it back to Nebraska. Still stop there at the.
Absolutely. You got the Husker polo on. I love it.
Yeah. Just wonderful people. There at Sycamore.
That's awesome, Jim. I really appreciate your time, especially that last story. I think, of all your stories, that one with Gunnar Henderson and Eli, that's one of my favorites. Like I said, baseball, I love, and just making an impact in that young man's life. That's just so awesome. Even if Gunnar Henderson whoops up on my Yankees every now and then, that's still all right.
Oh my gosh. The Yankees? Don't bring that up.
I bring up the Yankees for the podcast.
At least, we're not talking about the Dodgers.
No Dodgers, I'm with you on them.
Yeah. So, but it's all in good fun. And we actually have Yankees fans or disciples like you, at St. John, okay, this family, they love the Orioles, but that's about the only family that loves the Orioles. And some families, they like the Rays. That's the other big team around here. But
sure.
The Yankees, it's like it's horrible. But no, it's fun. It's fun.
It is fun. This podcast was fun. Jim, we're wrapping up here. Is there anything else you'd like to say, or we can wrap this up?
No, I'm good, and I'm good. Just it was a very enjoyable experience, and appreciate the opportunity. Anytime you want to do this again, that'd be fun. I'm sure a few other stories I could share too.
Duly noted. I'm so glad you were my first guest here on the principals list, and that sure sounds like an invitation that you'll be willing to come on again sometime. So I might hold you to that at some point down the road.
Happy to.
Thanks, Jim. I really appreciate your time, sir.
All right.
Your stories were awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Take care.
You too, Jim. Bye-bye.
Bye.